Hey everyone, it's Chris here, and today I'm going to talk about all of the items that I use in my gear setup to keep all of my gear dry when I'm out on hikes. So one of the realities of being out in nature and hiking is that there are going to be days that are wet and raining. And you want to be best prepared as you can to deal with that kind of weather and make sure that your gear is going to stay dry when you're in those conditions. There's a number of different things that I use to keep the various parts of my gear dry. And for you guys who are out hiking regularly, you probably use maybe some or possibly all of these things that I use. If you're just getting into hiking though, and you're looking at ways to keep your gear dry when you're going to be out in wet weather, hopefully this video will help you guys to get some ideas about the sort of things you can do to keep your gear dry. If you're out on a day hike, it's probably not going to be as big a deal if you get some of your gear wet during the day because you're going to be going home to a dry house at the end of the day. However, if you're out on a multi-day hike, you need to be prepared to have all of your gear waterproofed so that when you get to camp, you know that you're going to have gear dry. There's nothing worse than turning up, getting your camp set up and realizing that maybe you've got a wet sleeping bag and you're going to have to sleep in that for the night. So what I'll take you through now is the various items that I use to keep my gear dry. And this is a system that's been working really well for me and I've never had an issue with any wet gear so far. So the first level of waterproofing that I do is I line my pack with a heavy duty garbage bag, and that's the one that you can see up behind me here, and that just gives me a good waterproof lining within my pack. A lot of packs are water resistant but not necessarily waterproof, and after enough rain they will eventually start to wet through. So having a pack liner like a garbage bag, for example, that I use, just gives you that extra level of waterproofing for all the gear that's sitting inside that. The next thing that always goes into my pack at the bottom of it is my sleeping bag. And what I use for that is a compression bag. So basically it looks like this. It's actually got a compression valve in there, so once you actually roll down the roll top on this, you can actually squeeze all the air out of it. And then it's even got these compression straps on it as well. So they'll just obviously not get the sleeping bag down nice and small, and that fits really nicely into the bottom of the pack. That's just a really good way to make sure that the sleeping bag is going to stay dry, and I've always managed to keep a dry sleeping bag when I've had it in this stuff sack. The next thing after my sleeping bag that I'm going to want to keep dry are my clothes. So any clothes that I'm carrying in my pack during a hike, I'm going to put in a dry bag as well. Now the ones that I generally use, depending on the hike I'm doing, is this green one here, which is a little bit of a larger size if I need slightly more clothes, or this blue one, which is a bit smaller. So I've got a choice of a couple of different ones that I use, and again, these are just roll top bags that have kept my clothes dry every time. So I just know that I've always got a dry change of clothes to get into if I turn up to camp and I'm wet, or just to get into to be more comfortable in my camp clothes for the evening. The next thing I want to make sure that I'm keeping dry as well is my food. So the food bag that I'm using now is this Dyneema food bag. And I did actually put a separate video up recently about that when I first purchased this. So I'll put a link up here so you can go and check that one out if you like. And again, it's just a roll top bag. I actually put all of my food into other Ziploc bags, which I'll talk about in a minute. And they'll go inside this. And I normally keep my pot and my stove just inside this as well. The pot really doesn't matter if it gets wet, to be honest, but it's just easier. It just keeps everything for my cooking system together. The next lot of gear that I want to make sure that I'm keeping dry is any electronics gear that I'm taking with me. So that includes my camera, my phone, any chargers that I carry with me and any cables. So I want to make sure all of that stuff is staying dry as well. So generally what I use for most of the chargers and cables is this smaller dry bag. Again, a little roll top bag. And in this I normally keep a battery pack, any cables and spare batteries all in this one. And that then leads on to the way that I actually keep individual items dry within dry bags, just for an extra level of waterproofing. Maybe unnecessary, but I just like to do it because it's just an extra level of protection that I've got from anything getting wet. So that is the humble but very useful Ziploc bag. These things are just great, and I'm sure there's plenty of you that probably use these as part of your essential waterproofing setup. So generally I just use 3 different sizes of Ziploc bags. Normally the larger ones like this, I normally use that as a bag to put food in. So I use one of these for each day if I'm on a multi-day hike, just to bag up one day's worth of food. So that's generally what I use the larger ones for. And then there's these medium ones that I also use. These generally also get used for different sorts of food items, but there's a couple of other things that I may use these for as well. And then the last one is the smaller bags. And as I was talking about before, I'll normally put things like my battery pack in one of those, and any cables like headphones and a phone charger. So I just keep them in these smaller Ziploc bags. And then these will go inside that smaller roll top dry bag that I showed you before. The other thing I have is actually for my phone. I've just got a dry pocket that I use for the phone, generally because I keep my phone in one of my hip belt pockets just for easy access. If it's going to be wet, I'll generally put my phone inside this dry pocket, just so I know that it's going to stay dry, because the hip belt pockets generally do get wet inside when I'm out hiking, because they're not waterproofed in any other way. So that just makes sure that I am keeping my phone dry. And then the final level of waterproofing that I use for my setup is a rain cover on my pack. And my pack happened to actually come with one of these, so did my day pack actually. They both have rain covers built into them. So generally if it's anything more than light showers, I'll normally put this over the top, and that just gives me a final level of waterproofing for everything inside my pack. So some of you may think that that's too many layers of waterproofing that I use, but it's just a system that I know is going to keep everything dry, and it's just the one that I like to use. None of these bags that I use have any real particular weight to them, so it's not like it's adding a lot of weight to your setup overall, and it's just a peace of mind, I guess, that everything is going to be protected and dry, and that I don't need to worry about turning up to a campsite and having wet gear inside my pack that I have to deal with potentially for the rest of that hike. So that's it. That's just a quick overview of all of the items that I use in my setup to keep all of my gear dry when I'm out hiking. So I hope you found this video useful. If you got anything out of it, hit the like button, and if you haven't had a chance to subscribe to my channel yet, hit the subscribe button. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you out on the trail next time.